Hello, so today we're going to be talking about 10 underrated books, hidden gems, you might say. Books that I really don't see talked about on BookTube very much at all, but that I think are excellent and well worth the read. I'm going to start with the book Housekeeping because I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about this book except for the one commenter that recommended it to me shortly before I read it. So this follows two sisters who were originally being raised by their grandmother, but when she passed away, they were taken in by their great aunts who were very elderly and really unable to do the job. Eventually, they ended up with a different aunt who also wasn't the ideal caretaker. These girls are going through a lot of grief and turmoil in their life, and as they're being passed from home to home and as they're processing everything that's happened to them, all the loss that they're experiencing, they're trying to keep it together. They're trying to cling to what little family they have, even if it's not necessarily always the best thing for them practically. This is an extremely atmospheric book. The setting and the area that they're living in really reflects the struggle that they're having of clinging to what little life there is left, or what little semblance of what once was that's left, but sometimes it seems like it's a losing battle. This is a book that doesn't really present the best option on page, rather it just presents characters trying to figure out, do I stay in this current situation or do I try to get out of it and find something different? It isn't a story that presents you with the most satisfying beat for beat what happens. The reader is very much left with human characters making human assessments and decisions rather than a plot that flows because that would be the most satisfying, if that makes sense. It's one that I think demands discussion. Discussion around, was that the right decision? Is this what's really best for them? Is this character right? Because the story doesn't really give you the conclusions of what's right. It just gives you something that feels very, very real. Also, the prose, oh my goodness, I remember just dwelling on the prose of this book. I remember just sitting with sentences and unpacking them because so much would be said with so little. It's not a fast-moving book at all. It's very slow and somber, which is probably why it's not popular, but it's one that really captured me when I read it. Changing pace is something a little bit more epic. I'm gonna recommend Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norell. Now, Susanna Clarke is well known for her novel Piranesi, which I think is really popular here on BookTube for good reason. I adore that book and really wanted to talk about it here, but I think that it's just a little bit too popular to be put on this particular list. But Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norell is this very thick book. I can't remember, I think it's around 1,000 pages. Actually, I have a phone. 1,006 pages. So it's one of those books that you can just sit with for a while, which I think is perfect for winter time. And it's taking place, I believe, during the Napoleonic Wars, and it follows a society in old England that magicians have faded into obscurity. They're really not a part of society any longer. And we follow two magicians who are both scholars, both well learned in their trade, and both extremely different from one another. This is a very slow-paced book as well, or it can be at times. It's very scholarly. It's very studying magic and seeing what their lives really look like in their rivalry. But it's also big explosive magic scenes, like really incredible action as well. It's a book that you can just sink into for a long time and really get lost in because of how, I mean, if you've read Piranesi, then you know what Susanna Clarke is capable of with creating atmosphere and creating this world that you kind of just get lost in. This one is far more character focused than Piranesi is, I think, and also just so much wider scale. Next, we're going to move to something very different from that, and we're going to talk about Foster. This is a very short book. It follows a young girl who is moving into a foster home temporarily. Everyone involved knows that this is a short-term circumstance, but there's a lot of hints. There's a lot of subtle lines that indicate that the home that she's coming from isn't what's best for her. She goes into this foster home with these loving, caring foster parents who have recently lost a child of their own, and really they've developed this bond and sort of heal together from a lot of a lot of what they've suffered and become a very beautiful family in the short time that they have together. You kind of watch them heal from this child's perspective. And because it's told from the perspective of this very young child, the prose is simple, but also the way that she observes things, very heavy things sometimes, is also very simple and innocent. So we, the reader, read between the lines of what's really being told. Again, this is another book that I walked away from just wanting to have discussion. Was this right? Was this the best thing for her in the end, the way that it ended? Because the book doesn't really tell us. It just gives us the ending. But it's one that calls to the reader to talk about and to process and to work through. We had some great conversations about this on my Discord when we buddy read this book. It's not really a book that you enjoy, but it was an excellent book and I enjoyed the conversations at the end of it so much. For something lighter, let's talk about The Eyre Affair. Now, this is one that I've spoken about plenty on my channel, so I'll keep it brief. But if you want something similar to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or Pratchett's works, not in content, because they write, obviously even just those two men write very different types of books. But as far as an author that understands how to use the English language on a level that most authors don't, so many play on words, so much clever use of language, double meanings of things, quick wit that the reader has to keep up with. Jasper Fforde, his name deserves to be said alongside these others, and I know that's really high praise, but I mean it. The plot of these books don't matter nearly as much, but we follow as someone who is going to investigate literary crimes, and to do so she must enter into novels, and we encounter a lot of classic characters. You don't have to have read every book that's referenced in the Eyre Affair or in any of the sequels. It is a delight when you do understand the references, but if you don't, it's still just funny and clever and witty and fast-moving and brilliant. The jokes in these books have me laughing so much. The cleverness, it just baffles me. The characters are a delight. The insanity of what goes on in these plot lines are perfect. It's perfect. I love these books so much. I love them so much. Next, we'll talk about a book that I actually own physically. Mapping the Interior. This follows a 15-year-old Native American boy who one night sees a figure in his doorway that looks like his father, who has recently passed away. As you can see, it's an extremely short book, so I won't say much about the plot on this. I will say that it messes with dimensions like many books that I love do. Piranesi, I was just speaking about that one. Anyway, the house, what's under the house, everything just seems bigger and deeper than what he originally thought it was. This is a story really focused on grief, on reflection, on culture, family history, bullying. It covers a lot in a few pages, and it covers it all while also being a literary horror. So there's a lot of very disturbing scenes in here as well, but those scenes lend to what's being explored. I read this book, I think 2 years ago, and it still sticks with me. Next up, we'll talk about A Natural History of Dragons. This is a series that's kind of a sci-fi fantasy. We follow a naturalist who's studying dragons. We follow a character who's fighting for her right to be able to study in this field and to be recognized as a published naturalist. It starts off in her domestic life, and then it expands a lot over the course of these 5 books. So the first book really doesn't have a lot of dragons, which is unfortunate, but it has a lot of personal character stuff, and because this is written as a memoir, this is her at the end of her life, the end of her career, when she's has a lot of notoriety, when she's done so much in her field, she's now looking back and writing her story. So naturally, we begin before she is published or accomplished or really known at all, as memoirs tend to do. So you kind of have to be patient with the series. I personally loved book 1 because there was so much done with her character and with her life and with her fight to be able to be on the field, and the big mistakes that she makes with huge consequences. Book 2 I didn't love. I'll just be honest with you. I think it was like a 2-star book. But then 3, 4, and 5 were all excellent, especially 4 and 5. Oh my goodness, so good. So I'm warning you in advance. It is one of those books that you have to be patient with, or a series that you have to be patient with a bit. But if you don't mind a slow-moving story following someone through their career of studying dragons, and it does eventually have a whole lot of dragons in it and a whole lot of adventures with them. But also at the end of the story, I just looked back. I think her name was Isabella. I actually don't remember. I look back on her whole life's journey, all the mistakes she made, all the work and labor that she put in, the relationships that she birthed, the character growth that she had. I was so proud of her at the end of her career for how far she had come. It's not a super action-packed story, and I could see it probably not working for a lot of people, but I loved it. Next up is The Machine Stops. This is another very short book. It's under 100 pages, and it takes place in a time where human interaction isn't really needed or wanted anymore. Everyone lives within a machine that meets all their needs. Any sort of food, any sort of entertainment, any sort of communication. Push of a button, the machine provides it. Why would I need to leave this machine? Why would I need to go talk to you in person? Just call me. As you can imagine, the world is heavily affected by this change in society as well. And so are people's minds, the way they think, the way they process the world, what they want out of the world, and how they want ideas. I know that's so vague, but the line, "no ideas here," is so impactful in this very short story. This was written, I think, 100 years ago, and it's still so relevant today. Next up, I'm going to talk about a nonfiction. I know I've been reading a bunch of nonfiction lately, but one that I read a long time ago that I just don't think anyone knows about unless you've been watching my videos. It's called Aquanaut. I've spoken about it a couple times, but not in a really long time, so you have to hear me talk about it again. If you watch the documentary, which I've forgotten the name of, oh no, it's on the screen, the one about the divers who saved the boys that were stuck in a cave and tides were rising and they were going to die, and it was an impossible mission, but through a great collaborative effort, these few excellent divers were able to save all of them. It's an incredible documentary. This is a book written by one of the divers. Much like these books go, we start in his childhood and we get to know him a little bit and learn about his career as a diver, but we also get a lot more information about this particular rescue that happened than the documentary, of course, provided. A lot more of the behind the scenes of them trying to actually get there to be able to even attempt, and how many barriers there were there, and really how lucky they were to just have some connections that allowed them to be able to get to the point where they could try to rescue these boys, as well as so much more. It's if you liked the doc, if you haven't watched the documentary, you should. It's excellent. If you liked the doc, I do recommend the book. I think it was excellent. My dad said that it was his favorite book, but he says that about a lot of books because he forgets everything he reads 3 weeks later. 2 more left, and I'll make them both brief because they're books that I've spoken about quite a bit. Klara and the Sun, which I think is not actually super hidden gem. I think that it's well enough known, especially because Ishiguro is well known on BookTube, but this is Never Let You Go, I think, is the one that people talk about the most. Now, myself and Joanna and a couple of other people have recently read Klara and loved it so much that we do talk about it, so it is a little bit more spoken about. Anyway, I said it'd be quick. Okay. Klara and the Sun is a sci-fi following she's a robot whose purpose is to be a friend to whoever were to purchase her. So we start off with Klara in the shop, reflecting on the rays of the sun, reflecting on things that are relevant to her, and customers that come in. She starts to talk to them and build a bond with them, whether they purchase her or not. And then we get her in her new family, the purpose that she's supposed to serve for the family. And it's a book that takes place here on Earth, but it's a very different Earth. Clearly something has changed about society. Something significant has changed about society, not just the detachment of we now have synthetic friends instead of, human and less human interaction. But a lot has changed in society, both in atmosphere, like an environment, in societal structures, but also in advancement of what we can do with our AI, but all of that is the backdrop and it's not expanded on quickly. It's a very slow peeling back as Klara just observes what's around her, just gets to know the world. She's not aware of what's different from this world to our world. She's not inclined to explain anything to us, and she's always lived in a shop. So what does she know? So she just makes these observations and then we have to try to piece it all together. It's fascinating the way that it's told. Klara is very anthropomorphized. Klara feels so human. It's really hard not to become very attached to her, which makes what she goes through when she's used as an artificial friend instead of as a person really difficult to read, which is interesting from a reader's perspective to go through. It's fascinating, it's bittersweet, I love it. Last is A Letter from an Unknown Woman. So I've spoken about this so much. It's another really short one, under 100 pages. It's by Stefan Zweig, who's well known, well, I don't know how well known. What he's well known for is Chess Story, which you should also read. But this one is even shorter, and it's about a woman who wrote a letter to a man who does not know her, does not remember her, and she, in her dying breath, in her last days, is writing to him to let him know that she has been obsessed with him and following him, and her life has revolved around him through this point. It's a story of obsession. Though she sees it as a story of love, it's clear to the reader that it is something deeply unhealthy, and that has essentially her warping her life around this man who doesn't even know her has destroyed her life in many ways, or stolen her life, I suppose you could say. Like I said, it's an obsessive narrative. It is her writing, and it's fascinating to read. The first time I read it, I read through the whole thing thinking, this is a 1-star book. This is toxic. This is horrible. I hate it. And then we got to the ending and I said, oh, wait, this was 5 stars. And then I turned around and I read the whole thing through again, same day. Again, under 100 pages, so it's not like that impressive, but I became obsessed because the way it was written, I went in knowing nothing. So the way it was written, I thought that I was supposed to be reading a love story, and I'm like, this is no love. And then I realized it wasn't trying to be a love story. It was trying to be a story of obsession, destructive obsession. And then I loved it so much. I know I've talked about this a lot, but read it. You may hate it, but I will not change. So those are 10 books, 10 quick recommendations for underrated books, books that you maybe don't hear talked about all the time, unless you follow me, then maybe some of these. But a lot of them that I haven't spoken about in a long time, and I really wanted to bring them back up again because they're books well worth the read. Please do chat with me more in the comments. I would love to hear if you plan on picking any of these up, if any of these caught your eye, or if you've read them and you have thoughts on them. I'll see you again soon. Bye.